or something.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Cedar Rapids Community School Board Education Meeting. Today is June the 10th, 2019. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Could I have someone read the approval of the revised agenda?
I move that the revised agenda of Monday, June 10th, 2019 Board of Education meeting be approved as set forth, and that each item is considered ready for discussion and/or action.
Have a second?
Second.
This is a roll call.
Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Borcherding.
Aye.
Director Laverty.
Aye.
Director Jacobo.
Aye.
Director Jansen.
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we have the superintendent's report. Take it away, Dr.
All right, thank you, President Humbles. Kennedy High School Girls Go Cyberstart team has been competing to solve cybersecurity puzzles since April, and they just recently qualified for the national competition. The team consists of Jamie Anderson, Callie Miller, Rama El Shaikh, Lacey Cruz, Ashlyn Wilson, Allie Anderson, and Abigail Pape. All members will continue competing until June 28th for state prizes and scholarships. But the team chose 4 members to participate in the final Capture the Flag stage, which took place June 5th through June 7th. Jackson Elementary students recently participated in 2 unique experiences. At the end of May, all students participated in Takeaway Hunger by raising $5,000 to create 20,000 meals. They also packaged the meals, which were then distributed around the United States to those facing food insecurity. And the Jackson Film Club completed its second short feature film that was entirely written, directed, acted, and filmed by Jackson students. Mystery on the Jackson Jet premiered at Marcus Theater on Saturday, June 1st, with a red carpet walk at 9 a.m. and showings of the film at 9:45 and 10:15. Approximately 40 students participated in this club and dedicated their talents and time to this project. The Cedar Rapids Community Schools Foundation recently announced the 2019 recipients of the Ernie Pence Memorial Grant, the Joy Bayshore Memorial Grant, and the CRCS Foundation Professional Development Grants. Natalie Miller, orchestra teacher at Roosevelt Creative Corridor Business Academy and Jefferson High School, received the Ernie Pence Memorial Grant. Mrs. Charlotte Pence, widow of the late Ernie Pence, former Board of Education president, presented the award. Julie Bradley, EL teacher at Harding Middle School, received the Joy Bayshore Memorial Grant. And Karen Swanson, Foundation Executive Director, presented 3 CRCS Foundation Professional Development Grants. Recipients were Ann DiGiamaco, ELL teacher at Wright Elementary, Lori Mead, Gear Up Coordinator at Kennedy High School, and Cassie Lynch, teacher at Jefferson High School. A total of $1,400 was granted to these 5 district educators to further their professional development. So congratulations to all these educators, and a big thank you to the foundation for all their support of our students and staff. And then finally, thank you to this board. This is my final full board meeting as the superintendent of Cedar Rapids, and so I want to thank you for the bold vision that you've cast, the strategic plan that you have led and supported, the work that's underway with equity and access, recent wins that I think are worth celebrating on our journey here, and just best wishes to each of you going forward. So thanks for allowing me to be a part of the team over these years. So.
Is that it?
Yep.
Thank you. Any board?
President, I just have a question for, is the Jackson film, is that available that we could look at? Is that online somewhere?
I do not know that, but I could certainly chase that down.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any board reports?
Yeah, I have some. So I was able to actually attend that film, and it was just Oscar-worthy. Awesome. It was so fun. The kids actually had such a great time. It was just an awesome opportunity for project-based learning. They really enjoyed it. Also, for the Takeaway Hunger, that is actually spearheaded by a retired staff member, Connie Stusak, who was a teacher at Jackson for years and years. And I think it just really speaks volumes about our organization that we have returning staff that want to come back and work with our students and promote activities. I think it's just fantastic. And I think that really, that's something that as an organization we should be proud of. Additionally, in addition to all of the fantastic graduations and staff recognitions, I was able to attend the Student Built House, which was great. It was really a beautiful house. They did a great job this year, and I believe it sold within 3 days at asking price, within 3 days of listing. So they did a really fantastic job at that. And I think that I'd like to take a moment and thank Dr. Buck. I think that we have success in these areas because of your leadership and allowing us to have some innovation in the way that we're approaching education. So thank you for that.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll move, communications, delegations, and petitions, do we have?
I have none.
Since there's no request to speak to the board this evening, we will move on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that the board would like to pull or need further discussion? Seeing none, we need a motion to accept the the consent agenda due to the personnel report and the work agreement.
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Director Borcherding? Aye. Director Laverty?
Aye.
Director Jacobo?
Aye.
Director Jansen?
Aye.
Director Anhalt?
Aye.
President Humbles?
Aye. Next, we'll move to administration, the audit committee report. Dave Nicholson, this is an information item only.
Welcome. We've got 3 members from our audit committee here tonight. Lovis, Wendy Lynn, and Scott Samancic. I'm going to move the slides forward when I get to you.
I don't know. And that's why we're going to leave it. This year, we welcomed 2 new members to our committee, Scott Arndorf, and I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, and Drew Yoder. We also modified our charter to designate the board representative as a liaison, and want to thank Jennifer for her attendance at our meeting this year. I know that sometimes they could be, I don't think dull, but I've heard tell they could be dull. But anyway, and we also modified our charter to include the district's legal counsel to brief the committee on legal matters that may be of importance to the committee. And that what we also did, which Scott here was a big contributor to, was we adjusted the format of the local revenue report so that it allowed us to see differences and review those more effectively. I'll turn it over to Scott.
One job, Dave.
I know, and I was failing.
Good evening, I'm Scott Samancic. The committee also implemented an armored car service for Student Activity Fund and the SC deposits, primarily for a couple of reasons. One, because we want to safeguard the monies that were being moved between buildings and the bank, but secondly, for the security of the individuals that were carrying that. Many of those people were not used to that sort of thing, so we want to make sure that they were secure. We also modified the activity fund agreed upon procedures with RSM to provide a more focused review of areas highlighted by the auditors. What we gave them was an opportunity to be flexible should they find an area of which looked like there were a number of instances of findings, if you want to put it that way, that they were allowed to expand that search a little bit to delve a little deeper and give the committee a little more insight as to what was happening. We also modified the charter to required updates regarding the MIP program to 2 of the meetings, just to give us more insight to what was happening with the health program.
Good evening, I'm Wendy Lynn. It's nice to see you all. Another thing that we did this year, we modified our charter to allow the appointment of a committee chairperson pro tem, somebody to kind of be under the wings of the current chairperson. They don't have to become chairperson the subsequent year, but it's just nice to have someone that has that experience to take the place if that's what happens. We also added a conference phone option for when we have meetings. It's useful. Scott's company is in Iowa City, and Maureen lives a little bit farther away, so if there are times when we can't get there, we're still able to participate via phone. We had 2 members as well complete their terms. Scott Semanek and Andrew Teat are not renewing their membership for various reasons, and we elected 2 new folks to take their place for next year. Okay. So 2 recommendations you see on the screen. One is to hire an internal auditor, either as a full-time employee or a contracted person. We just feel that's best practices based on the size of our district. And the other issue was with the Financial Integrity Hotline, just making its presence more known or maybe in a different place where it's easier to find. Does anyone have any questions?
So when you're saying hire an internal auditor, I mean, that's something that we can take under advisement. I appreciate everything that you do. So that
absolutely.
is helpful for us to know.
Great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you to all of you. I mean, as citizens, you're volunteering your time and your expertise to the school district, and this is a community school district with a very large budget of public funds, and to have your oversight of this is critical and adds that level of trust with the community. So thanks to all of you and your colleagues who serve on this committee.
Keep up the good work. We appreciate it. Next. Dave, you're back up. The resolution proposal for the sale and tax revenue bonds.
We had some great turnout on the bids, and I'll have Tim here if he wants to add anything more that I share. But we had actually 7 bids that came in for our bonds, and the low bid we had was from Key Government Finance for 2.33% interest rate, which is a great interest rate. And so we're thrilled to have that, and it was a nice showing, having 7 bids. That was good. We had from, some banks from down south that are prevalent down south, like BB&T is a more down south bank, and Regions Bank is more prevalent down south. And we actually had U.S. Bank also bid local, branch, so we have local here as well. So, but it was great to see that we had 7 bids. So, and that's what we're kind of recommending tonight is the approval of the low bid with Key Government and approve the resolution to be able to move forward with the selling of those bonds.
And can you just explain to us again, if we approve the bonds, the sale of these bonds tonight, then what are the next processes?
We will actually, and I'll ask Tim to step up to kind of back me up on here. We will have a special meeting we'll need to hold prior to the sale of those bonds, which would have to be, and we'll plan on that on the 24th, to do a special meeting to sell that and approve the documentation to finalize that with the closing being intended to be around June 28th, not July, June 28th for closing of those bonds. So.
That special board meeting is tentatively scheduled for the 24th at 9 a.m.
Right.
That's the only question I had.
I'm sorry, what did you say, John?
That's the only question I had.
Oh, okay.
So, and if you've been around the private placement, it's much more less rigorous a process than it is going for GO bonds, and in actuality, it's less costly as well. for the district. So it's great when you can do a private placement versus a GO bond. So.
Great.
Any other questions? We need a motion
A motion and a second, yes,
and a
please.
second.
And this- roll call.
We need a motion for the proposal to sell and tax revenue bonds. A motion,
So move.
second.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Director Laverty. Director Jacobo. Director Jansen.
Aye.
Director Anhalt.
Aye.
Director Borcherding. President Humbles.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're done.
All right.
Now we'll move to learning and leadership, our school security and update, Noreen Bush and Laurel Day.
Well, I think we'll wait for the PowerPoint to come up. But in the meantime, thank you for having us tonight. It's hard to believe a year ago, we were presenting a product to the board about a task force that we had put together. And so tonight we want to give you an update from the results of that task force a year ago. A lot of work has been underway. And then we also would like to present some information to you about some things that have been set forth for the vision of the state and some regulations that have been put forth in regards to safety and security. So we're going to update you on two things tonight. One, again, about our security task force a year ago, the recommendations from that task force and the work that we've had underway over this past year. And then secondly, we would like to present to you what an EOP is, which is an emergency operations plan, which has to be presented to you and that you also have to approve. That is part of state mandate now, and so that will be part of our presentation tonight as well. So, President Humbles, Board of Directors, I'm glad to introduce you to our team here tonight. So, again, I'm Noreen Bush, Deputy Superintendent, Laurel Day, Board Secretary, but who also for a long period of time has led a lot of security and safety measures for our district. Eric Whirling, who is our Security Safety Supervisor. That was a new role. That's part of my update for you tonight. And then Darius Ballard, who's Assistant Principal at Washington High School, will kind of talk to you about at the building level how things are living and breathing, okay? So just to remind you where we were a year ago, the task force had some outcomes, and you'll see that the first two bullet notes here are checked off, and that these have been notes of accomplishment for us. And the other bullets, the work is underway, and the work continues. But first and foremost, we did hire a school security and crisis response supervisor, and that is Eric Whirling. He was hired in October and hit the ground running in assessing our system and been able to give us some support about the future work. And then in addition to that, secondly, we expanded our committee to some really a working team to help develop the next three bullets, which is our curriculum for students and staff to use and how they respond to a crisis. And we've had this for a while. We've had drills for a while, but this is an enhancement of where we have been and where we want to go. And again, the team will present about that information and how we've further developed our curriculum and the vision as we move forward. And then the last two bullets is enhanced drills. We have revved things up a little bit here this spring, but we have a vision of where the work will continue, and Eric will touch on that tonight, and as well as a communication plan and perhaps even some communication apps and devices that we might need to keep our community informed about crisis plans as we, again, enhance our curriculum and where we've been. So, without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Laurel Day, who's going to talk about where we have been and before we step into where we are going. I will gladly be Vanna.
Very good. Good evening. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the high-quality emergency operations plan. Since the mid-1990s, our school district has maintained a crisis response manual. It basically consisted of two parts. The first part was basically an overview of the crisis situation with quick response information and who to contact. It also identified our reunification centers, and then it would provide information related to active threats, specifically run, hide, fight, and information about our lockdowns and differentiation between those. The second section then was really related to specific events. So what we would have like tabs that would be specific to gas line breaks, severe weather, snowstorms, thunderstorms, hazardous materials, floods. All those tabs then were followed up with a basic checklist that talked about lessons learned, things that we would want to consider as a team specific to the relevant to what we were dealing with at the time. So a checklist that would help us think about, have we done this? Have we considered this? Would we want to think about doing that? Each year that manual was updated. However, in the summer of 2016, I had talked with Dr. Buck about one of my goals and had made it a priority to review this manual with the hope of providing additional information that might be helpful to our teams during the crisis. So following my review, I formed our very first ever district security committee, and our first critical piece of work for us was to review that manual, and Darius is going to speak a little bit about that process here just shortly. But what that committee's work did was set us up for success as it relates to the passage of the new state legislation requiring school districts to have a high-quality operations plan in place by July of 2019. That new law requires that a school board ensure a plan is in place, and at the end of our presentation this evening, we will be asking for your consideration and approval of that plan. And without further ado, here is my good friend, Darius Ballard.
Thank you. And so how did we do what we did over the last year or so? So the approach we took was a chunk and chew approach. I love the fact that our group is made up of people from all different walks of life. We aren't just school employees, we're just district level. We had people from law enforcement involved. So we took all our different views. We looked at what we had and what Laurel had worked on, and was fairly comprehensive before we started. But we wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything, see if we needed to audit what we currently had so we can improve it. And it took us about the year. We tried to be very thorough and take our time going through it. I found it really advantageous for me because it allowed me to really understand all the different parts that make up our manual. And that came in handy this year. We had some emergencies or some precautions in a lot of ways. And just being able to reflect on my time with the manual in front of me, I was able to kind of think through things before the crisis or would-be crisis would have been a serious emergency. In December, we had progressed through quite a bit of it, and Eric was coming up to speed, and he was able to see what we had done and really kind of revise things based upon his wealth of knowledge from outside of our district. From there, we tried to finalize things further in March, and that has allowed us to feel like our manual, our EOP, is more comprehensive. It's more clear and concise, and it's a means to organize our thoughts when we enter a crisis. And I think it's really helpful because it gives me an opportunity that when I call the emergency number, I know the person on the other side has also read it, has it in front of them, and if I'm in a panic or I'm concerned, I know someone who's level-headed knows what needs to happen. And that's the purpose of the binder. That's the whole goal behind the manual. And that kind of concludes my part, and I believe next, Laurel is back up to take over.
So we want to talk a little bit about our history and where we're going. And I want to provide you with a brief overview of where we started with our district security initiatives and include our work up to where we were in 2018 before Eric joined us. So as previously stated, we had our district crisis response plan and drills in place in the mid-1990s. And we also had started with an initial placement of security cameras at our high schools. As subsequent years followed, we added cameras to all locations on a rotating schedule and still continue to do that today. Shortly after that, we then instituted mandatory ID badges for our staff. Next, we installed A-phones outside of our main entrances at our elementary and middle schools. And as you know, this system acts as an intercom, helping our staff to welcome and identify the purpose of our visitors, particularly during the school day. About that same time, our district insurance provider, EMC, was asked to conduct district security and safety risk assessments of our district, and their assessments provided us with suggested areas of improvement as well as possible solutions. Shortly after that, we then implemented a key card access system, and this system, as you know, also helps provide secure entrances in our schools. It allows us the ability to put doors on schedules to unlock and lock at appropriate times. We then did the review of the crisis response manual, formed a district security committee with wide representation, and then most recently, we have the addition of our visitor management system, which was successfully rolled out to all of our schools at the end of this school year. As it relates to Run, Hide, Fight, our initiation with that particular security protocol really began in 2002 and relied heavily on the assistance from the Cedar Rapids Police Department. They attended multiple training seminars with me over the course of 10+ years, and they also attended every training with our staff and all of our lockdown drills, providing assistance wherever we needed it. And at that time, we were really limiting our Run, Hide, Fight to the hide, which we got very good at doing. Our joint presentations always addressed our other two options, the run and the fight, but as part of our plan, we didn't practice those two. So we want to now take you to the future where we're going with that. And so with the recent hire of our school security supervisor, which was a recommendation from our task force, I'm really proud to introduce Eric Whirling, who I think credentials and background will help take our district to a new level related to active threats, threat assessment, and crisis communication. Eric?
I'm not going to live up to that. So, as Laurel said, we practiced hide, and that's what we're really good at. But we realized that with those other two options, there's a lot of logistics that come with those. So in order to do that, we had to come up with a system not only for teaching the staff, but to teach the students. So we used a subcommittee of that district committee to start working on a curriculum that was age appropriate, so we could give it and use it as a scaffolding approach. So we give something to the elementary students, a little bit more for middle school, a little bit more for high school. And using a trauma-informed approach, we could create something that they could use, that they could take with them when they leave the district. So something that applies to them in school, because that's where they're getting it, but they can take it with them when they leave. Something else that I worked on since I've been in here is doing assessments, getting in, meeting the principals, meeting the administration, meeting some of the teachers, getting in and physically being in the schools so I can see where we're at and what we needed. The great thing is, we were in a good place. I didn't come into a mess. I came into something spectacular, so it was really easy to hit the ground running. So that put us in a good space. So when the crisis manual already existed and the new state law came in that said we needed this emergency operations plan, the hardest thing was figuring out the formatting and changing the name of it. Everything else that we had in place was already good, and I mean that. Everything else was already very good. We had to do very little from the existing plan to make it meet state code. Some of the things that were on there that we needed to just make sure that everyone's aware of is it had to specifically address the active shooter events and weather events, which it already did. We needed to have something in there about communicating to vendors who normally work within the district. So if we sent out an electronic message about an incident, that we'd have to notify that employer so they could notify their people that were possibly working here. So that's written into the plan as well. That's also going to tie into our communications that I'll talk about in a minute. We have to annually review and update the plan and come to you, which is what we're doing tonight. The plan does have to be confidential. And the plan, as has been mentioned before, it was a collaboration with law enforcement, emergency management, and several people within different spots within the district. So, like I said, everything that we've done so far has put us in a great spot. The state code actually said now we have to have at least one drill, and it stipulates the type of drills. So we can have full drills where we're doing lockdowns, and then as we enhance Run, Hide, Fight, we can go through and do something more than just locking down. Those drills can also be tabletop exercises, which would be sitting around talking through what would happen during an event. So it's low stress, but you can talk about something very big, but you can make those mistakes in a kind of a controlled environment. So we are working this summer to craft that curriculum. So as we enhance Run, Hide, Fight, I'm versed in teaching to adults. I'm not versed into teaching K through 12 kids. So of that subcommittee, what we're doing is we're creating that curriculum. That's actually happening next week. We're going to get that curriculum going, get it down on paper, and then get the tweaks out so we can start implementing it. So that should be coming up very, very quickly. And I think about the only thing that we have to touch on here is the order that we decided to do them in was based on what we're currently doing. So Hyde we decided to do first because that's what we're currently doing. We can use that as a template, see how it goes, putting it in for the staff, see how it goes putting in for the students, use that to make sure that we're doing it for the best way possible, going into Hyde and then into Fight, since that'll be the last one. And then actually tomorrow we're going to be working on crisis communication. We're working on evaluating different systems so that we can talk among ourselves. So when we have incidents that happen in the district, we can communicate to the outside, and we can use those even during a recovery phase if something should happen.
So thank you, team. Kind of from a historical lens to the current state and also casting to where we hope to go in the future. It does take a tremendous amount of energy and effort. This is never a comfortable topic, and it can be scary to talk about. Yet the commitment from the team, as I've been able to be on the both the security team and the task force team, people are very committed, and the number one thing they're committed to is keeping our children safe and keeping our staff safe. And so in order to do that, we have to have a plan of response. So very, very proud of the work. And honestly, I just want to give a public acknowledgement to Laurel Day, who has done this work kind of in isolation for a long time. People are always willing to help and be there, but she has been the spearhead for so many years. And every day we say how much we love the fact that Eric is here from his perspective and his expertise, but Laurel really built this system for a long time, so hats off to her. We're in a really great place. Questions?
Follow up with that, yeah. Because when I was working with the district, I carried an emergency response
manual
binder, whatever, at that point, and how thorough it was and how helpful, and you knew by category this event opened it up and it went right down. But the other is that I don't know if a lot of people remember, I do. She played a key part in 2008 because she was part of the Lynn County emergency response and was on the communications team there. And it was part of her effort that, if you remember, not one life was lost during that, that very tragic incident. And a lot of it had to do with not only her work, but also the foresight of Lynn County and having that plan in place. So, yeah, she has a long history, and she has served us well. And again, thank you so much, Laurel, for your work and putting this, so much farther ahead than all of the other districts, really.
Well, and Darius didn't get into details, but we did have a little situation at WASH this year that was, we had, we didn't know what was coming out of event, but it wasn't anything toxic. There was nothing to be worried about. But this is what was really cool, is to have the plan in place. Darius had his checklist out and going through the checklist, and because when you're in that moment, you can get hijacked, but when you have a tool to help you and someone else on the other line to say, have you done this, have you done this? And then what was really cool is John's team came in, John Galber's team came in at the end, and we reviewed the event. The response team from the fire department and the police department reviewed it. We were all able to say, what would we do better next time, and could take a couple of notes to improve the EOP. So it served exactly how we needed it to in that moment.
So how the manual, where is it located at? I mean, in every one of the schools, and everyone has access to
And
know
I'll let
how
you
to
respond to that.
respond?
Mhm.
How's that handled?
Come on up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, I'm back. So to answer your question, there's always one in the main office area. And the expectation is for the school leader or a designee to know where it is. We are supposed to have kits. We're working on kits as well. That would kind of serve as a secondary or a second manual in the building, so that way you've got an opportunity. I always look at it as the first half is good information to kind of know what's there, general rules of thumb to make sure you're comfy, and then the second half is going to be much more specific to what incident. So that's what I always tell people the first couple of days. Read it.
So in addition to the main office, every school administrator and executive council also has a copy of that manual. And then if you approve the emergency operations plan this evening, then I believe what Eric and I are planning to do is to make it available electronically to our staff as well. Although some people would tell you that electronic, sometimes in the middle of a crisis, isn't the most beneficial. So having a hard copy is just as easy. So we're going to work on getting that distributed both electronically and in hard copy to all members of executive council.
Thank you.
Can't see you from here. Anyway, Eric, you talked about the elementary curriculum and just thinking about younger students, and
Yes.
so many of our students have already gone through the adverse childhood experiences and things, and thinking about the mental health of our students. So at that young level, are we thinking that they're actually going to go through this, you hear about active shooter experience training, or is that just for older students, or what's the thought process on that, and the mental health of the students going through these situations?
A lot of the stuff that's gaining a lot of press is a lot of ALICE training. ALICE training is very intense. ALICE training is people coming in with masks and weapons and firing at you, and that's not something we're willing to do.
Yeah.
I've gone through a lot of these. I'm actually an ALICE instructor, so I understand what that takes. One of the things that we're doing with each piece that we're putting in, I'm really stressing on, we've got to find a way that, it's sad that we have to do these trainings, but we do these trainings as a preventative measure to keep the students safe. It's the same reason that we do the fire drills, the same reason we do tornado drills. In case it happens, we need to have a response. We can do these trainings with as little impact as possible, and that's why we're trying to set up the curriculum with a trauma-informed approach. I'm also meeting with principals and with teachers to start changing layouts of rooms so there's more area that they can be safe in within their rooms, so then they can do things during lockdowns that are more normal instead of hiding in a corner, hiding under a desk, that sort of thing. So we're working on expanding the space that they can be in their room safely, and we're working on what things could they do quietly and safely during a lockdown to keep them from being into that traumatic frozen state.
So that sort of goes into a second question then that relates to facilities. So as we've been, and I think we'll be talking about this SAVE and all those things coming up, but thinking about how we make our facilities safer. So you mentioned there's some things in maybe the classrooms that we could do, but we've also talked about entrances and things. Is this committee the group that's looking at those facility safety things, or does that fall under other groups in the
And I'd
district?
welcome John Galbraith up at any moment. So, yes, it's a yes and.
Yeah.
So we have had those discussions. What was really great about Eric's new lens is he certainly knew some of our buildings as a community member. However, being in every single building and assessing the building, he could immediately give responses like, why is the office located there? Or why is this here? And giving us a fresh lens about what the most safe approach would be for each one of our buildings. But just as an example, Kennedy for a long time has had a more secure entrance. Jefferson went through that process last summer. Wash will be this summer. So making sure that we are using best practices. Single entrance in our schools is the best possible way to keep people out of our buildings who don't need to be there. But also, I think what I love that Laurel always enhances is that our intent is to be welcoming to everybody. We want you to be a part of our schools, yet our number one goal is to also keep everybody safe. And so, yes, there's been a lot of those discussions, but through a lot of John's department, they're assessing what those recommendations are. Some of it is simple as locations, but also its entrances. Secured locks, changed locks across buildings as well. So it's those sorts of measures. This task force has some ideas, but really we're collaborating with Buildings and Grounds about what those steps are.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Nancy, I have a couple of questions. Number one, as a legislative liaison, is the state monitoring the fact that the plans are in place and that the drills are happening? It's not just
Yes, so we have
mandating that you do.
we have a current system now that monitors when buildings do their drills, and that's not just for the lockdown drills, that's also for fire and tornado drills as well. So we keep a log and a record of that as a system. And then, so we have to actually have accountability that schools are conducting the drills. Is that your question?
Is that transferred to the state? We keep a record of it, but.
Yep, yes, and so through the beds report, which actually
Okay.
we have a spring beds report due right now, actually, this month.
Okay.
That we have to communicate that we have secured those drills in all of our buildings.
Good.
We'll have to give proof that the board approved a plan annually.
Yes.
So they won't take your plan and review your plan necessarily, but they'll expect to see that a board
That the board
approved a
actually-
plan.
Okay.
This is just one more feather in our district's cap, is we have a lot of districts reaching out to us saying, hey, can we see what you've done? We hear that you're on the cutting edge. Can we have your stuff? What we can give them is really a skeleton of what we've done. These plans are confidential for a reason, and that's to keep our kids and our staff and our buildings safe, and therefore if it's out there for everyone, so that is why we can't share everything, but we do. Eric has made some great relationships, especially with the surrounding districts, on sharing best practices. Waterloo's been very generous to us in sharing their curriculum on their enhanced Run, Hide, Fight curriculum, and we hope to do the same, learning experiences with other districts.
We don't have them copyrighted, do we, that we can get a, we can
I'm
get a
sure we
fee
could.
on?
I'm sure we could, Director Anhold, we could do that. You bet.
My second question is, I know there are some apps out there that will work with notifying staff. I think one of the problems, as I look at it right now, getting the information to the staff on, do we run, do we hide? Would be helpful to know what direction a possible problem is coming from and so on. So are we looking at?
Well, and I'll have Eric comment on what we're looking at tomorrow is one of those app features. But the key thing is, it's not communicating in an app what to do. You are in one location in this room and I'm in another. And if there should be a crisis, we need to assess our surroundings, and how you respond and how I respond might be different based on what's in the room. So the number one thing that we are trying to teach with this enhanced curriculum is how to assess your surroundings. So for our youngest learners, they'll have to follow the lead of the adults in the room, or adult in the room, and that is some key learning that we have to teach kids of how to respond to what's in their environment. So we might all practice hide, we might all practice run, and we might all practice fight, but depending on what's happening in a building, each room might respond differently because they have to assess their surroundings. So I'll have Eric comment on that app tool.
And you're right, there are several applications that could be used to give that information out, because what's really key in order to do exactly what Noreen said is information. Knowing what's going on, where it's going on, and then I can apply that to where I'm at. So that's why this enhanced program is, as Noreen said, we're teaching a process so they can apply it wherever they're at, and that's why it can be taken from school out with them into the world. So we're evaluating 4 different apps. We're having 4 different vendors present to us to show us what they can do, how they can work, and then we're going to use that group to review those apps to see, based on what they can provide, what do we actually need for the district, to then decide if it's something that we want to look for as something we want to actually utilize. The different apps have different abilities and different things they can and can't do, so it's just depending on what is it that we need out of it, which ones we're going to go with.
It's, I think we'd all agree, it's sad that we're at this juncture in education when we're putting one more burden, one more job onto our educators. I don't think that's what they signed up for, but again, it's better to be proactive than reactive, and I do appreciate all of the work, and we're certainly moving in the right direction to ensure our public that we're doing the best that we can to have a safe place for their students.
Jennifer.
Well, I have a question. These plans exist for all the buildings, including E ELSC?
So right now, what we have is the plan is written such that if the building wants to adopt it as their building plan, because it's right now a district plan which applies to the ELSC, and they can adopt it to their building, and if there's something specific they would need for their building, then we can make small changes or addendums to those. And I've offered myself to all the principals in the district to assist with those as necessary.
Excellent, thank you.
So I just wanted to make a quick comment and then follow that up with a question. So as a parent of a son that just graduated high school, from the time he was in kindergarten up until now, I've seen those changes firsthand from elementary to middle school to high school. And the changes over those years, they've been gradual but significant. So I know, Laurel, you were a key part of that. Thank you for that. But as part of that, I think there's a recognition that we see that we have to evolve, right? So my first question then has to do with the task force. Is that going to be an ongoing thing? Is it just an individual task force just to kick off this process? Are we going to have a committee, or do we have kind of that separate security committee?
So the task force that was formed last spring was for a sole purpose, and they
Okay.
completed their task. From there, Eric has formed some committees around building the curriculum. And then in addition to that, we also have the district security committee. That will be the group of individuals that have a cross-representation across the district, wide variety of different classifications of employees, and those are the individuals who will review what do we plan to do going forward. We're looking at putting in duress alarms. We're considering additional security cameras. So that'll be the committee that will be reviewing the work.
Okay, so the opportunity then, I mean, I recognize the collaboration and, with law enforcement and emergency management services, and that collaboration, that continuous improvement of best practices and implementing those things. And then we're kind of that final stop as a board to review it, to make sure it's keeping up with whatever the times are, right?
Right.
But then, are we then not going to have necessarily the opportunities to collaborate anymore, either with students or community members or with law enforcement? I
Yeah,
guess
so law enforcement's a key part of everything we do.
Okay.
They're at the table every time that we have conversations about what we're going to do in the future. So they, along with our Lane County emergency managers, will always be a part of our conversations. They really are the experts, and so we take a lot of their guidance and advice that come from them. In terms of staff, there'll be staff representation on the district security committee, again, a cross-section of individuals representing the district that'll be a part of that.
But this task force included parents, right? It did?
It did.
Okay, so,
It did. It included parents and high school students. And so I think that some of the conversation we've had with the subcommittee that's creating the curriculum is, once that is implemented and vetted, we need more voices to make sure that this is clear of what the expectations are. So part of the communication, that's that last bullet point of the task force, is once we said, okay, these are the enhanced drills that we're doing, is communicating with parents and families and making sure that we have opportunities to get that feedback. I hadn't considered, though, which I think would be a good suggestion, is perhaps reconvening that task force or a group similar to it to really audit the getting feedback once we have implemented that curriculum of what's working, what's not working, and how could we improve. Because this will have to be an annual commitment to you,
Exactly, yeah.
too.
Right.
And so doing that before we come to the board again would be excellent.
because I understand how the plan, we'd want to keep it confidential, but I think there's the opportunity to do exactly what you were saying.
Get feedback.
Yeah, and that
That's a great idea.
communication piece, because I know, and I'm sure other board members have heard it too, had questions from parents on, well, people see in buildings kind of the stuff that's out there, right? And we have layers of protection and security, so some of the things aren't meant for anyone other than those people that need to know, right? But then there are other things that the more we do to make people aware of it, the better.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you all. I mean, this is great because our children are important and the safety is a concern, and it's nice to see that there's a plan in place. But now what you're wanting from us is to vote on this,
Yes,
correct?
so what we're asking for this evening is your consideration and approval of the emergency operations plan.
So we need a voice vote, right?
That's correct.
So I just ask
All those in favor?
all those in favor of,
Aye, aye, aye.
okay, it's an aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
We're in
Good.
favor.
Yes, you are in favor.
You're all in favor.
Uh,
Security's good.
Thank you again. Next up is Career and Technical Education Update with John Rice and Tara Troster. Traster. Okay, I want to say it right. Thank you. I can't have this.
Good evening. This is really Tara's show, but I wanted to give her a little bit of introduction before turning it over to Tara, who leads our career technical ed work. I had the opportunity in the fall to go visit some of our students doing some CTE work at one of our campuses, and I was blown away at the quality and the focus and the commitment of our students. I saw a welding class where students had shown up 30 minutes early to practice their welding, and they were in the zone doing 60 different welding maneuvers before they were even going to be, the class was going to start. They were there so early. Went down to the next room, and there was an auto mechanic shop. And there were 6 kids waiting outside the hall, eagerly getting to get in there so they could practice working on these cars. And there's time after time after time where I've seen our students engaged in career technical education. They are thrilled, they're excited, they're passionate about their future, they're connecting their learning to these future pathways, and a lot of that is credit to the board and the leadership, Dr. Buck and Noreen and others, as well as Tara, who leads us on a day-to-day basis. So if there was any other job I would ever do in Cedar Rapids, it would be Tara's, because it's the best one to do. So turn it over to Tara, share away.
I do agree, and I do say that all the time, that I have the best job. Okay, I have the best job in the district. That's kind of plain and simple. I support career and technical education, and so during the presentation, I will refer to it as CTE. So I won't read through the mission. It is on our way documents, but really the goal is high-quality career tech ed programs. And so these high-quality programs only happen when we're engaged with industry, input from the students, workforce, so making sure that what the students are learning in class ties to careers that actually exist. And so when you hear career tech ed, it used to be vocational education and home ec and shop class, and those things still exist, but it's having that career focus, and it's ensuring that if they are building a bread box, which none of ours are right now, what skills go into that? And so that's where we talk the high quality programming. And so not just teaching and going back in what you saw when you were in high school, because they are kind of still sometimes in the dungeons or like down the hallway somewhere, but what learning is taking place, and then how does that transfer to jobs that exist in our region? I will get this. So in Cedar Rapids, our service areas are applied science, technology, engineering, manufacturing, arts, communication, and information systems, fancy way to say a lot of the computer sciences, business, finance, marketing, and management, and then human services. Human services is the family and consumer science. So everything that falls under human services, and I will go through slides that have those all broken down. I do owe you a little bit of an apology. What you have in front of you, what you're going to see, does have some more pictures because the students were finishing projects, and so the teachers were sending some more pictures. Currently, and this is just a snapshot, we have 1,616 enrollments in career tech ed programs across the district. These are just the ones on site, so just what's taking place in the building or the student-built house. And it's a semester snapshot because most of those classes are semester classes. We have 15 full-time instructors and then 3 part-time. Those 3 part-time could be teaching an art class and then family and consumer science to make a full-time schedule, but I kind of did this count probably 10 times to make sure. I'm like, that's a lot of students. And so we have teachers that are passionate about what they do, and then obviously enrollment numbers that show that our students are passionate about it also. In the applied science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing, this used to be basically industrial technology, so your shop class. And Iowa has broken it down to include advanced manufacturing, which we know is a high demand career, automotive, construction, the electric car program, Project Lead the Way, the student-built house, welding, and then woodworking. sorry, I'm just going to smile when I see these. This is the newest image. This is a student who has done an epoxy table with a river running through it, and the river represents the river in his home country in Mexico. And just neat as the teacher was talking about it and shared that with me. And then our students in the advanced construction classes, and this is across the district, build a shed. And so they compose it. If you're over in Washington, you'll see the garage doors open and the sheds being put together. So they build the sheds and then take them, deliver them, and set them up. And the young man over there has built a scrap table. So it's all the scrap pieces of wood in the shop, and then would have cut them down, gotten them evened out. And the table has varying lengths on it, which is difficult to see, but that's a scrap wood table. One of our areas of growth, and I will jump into this just right here, I'm saying he. We know that, and we're working on that, of engaging females in non-traditional careers for their gender, but then engaging males in careers also that maybe you don't often see a male in that. And so that is something we're aware of, working on through like micro-messaging, how are the classes marketed, how do students see themselves in that class, and so that's just ongoing work that we have. Kennedy High School has an electric car program, and if anybody has met Barry Wilson, who you have, I think 2 years ago, he was recognized, was it for 45 years? 2 years ago. So this program, students are involved in all aspects, and then they travel around the Midwest competing against colleges and other high schools in this electric car program. And the students design it, they go back there, the math that they use to make sure that these cars are running, and they do their trials. And if it's not fast enough, then they go back and they move more on the car. Students involved in this also market it all. So Barry has in his classroom a vinyl printer, and so when I ask him a question about something, he's like, Tara, you need to talk to my experts. And those experts are the students. So the students are designing all the cars, welding the cars, and then everything on that car has been printed in that classroom by the students. The trailer that's kind of over there in the corner has been lettered up by the students. So they're taking all aspects of this program, and they're the ones doing it. The project Lead the Way. This is where I have to go to my notes because there was some really deep conversation on how they described that for me. So the first one is a tower crane project, a capstone project for principals of engineering students. And they constructed the cranes from Vex and then Connex materials, which, you know, our kids have had Connex in the house, and controlled them via individually programmed robotic controllers. And then the students tested the cranes and eventually had a competition on whose crane could carry the most weight. And then the one over on the side, looks like just some little fun toy, and they turn it and the mouse is chasing the cat in this one. Really, it's students were required to translate rotational motion into linear motion to create a 3D toy. They 3D modeled and printed their cams, the little go-rounds, and prototyped their designs. So, you know, taking that initial, like, here looks like something fun, which it is, but the learning that they had to do, and then to create that prototype. So these two more Project Lead the Way programs, this one, and it looks off to the side, the Project Lead the Way students that have been in the classes for 4 years decorate a tile. So instead of just decorating a tile, this class used a 3D engraver and then added some, he said, let's get the exact terminologies. Electronics laser engraving project. So also using the electronics within that. Then the other, over off to the side, is partnering with the Blend Ed project. And so if you've been in and seen Blend Ed, they have all the saltwater tanks. Fantastic if you haven't been in to see it. But they needed these bio balls, which serve as a biological filtration. So instead of ongoing purchasing of these bio balls, the students designed, prototyped, 3D printed, and supplied for the Blend Ed program these bio balls. So just the collaboration that takes place across programs. The arts and communication information systems, lots of app development going on, and this is where I do get lost. As they're talking about original Android apps, supported those apps with a variety of methods, including websites, how-to videos, and other types of social media. And then with digital literacy, they're engaging in computer networking, graphic design, computer hardware, web page design, and then programming. Within our entrepreneurship, personal finance, and video game marketing, you walk into a classroom and these students, so I know one of the classes is working on a coffee shop that meets all of the guidelines that it needs to, but then also working with the culinary classes to make sure like the serves, so the safe food handling and all of that is also taking place. The classes also utilize Sims, and so they can practice restaurant management, hotel management, personal finance, sports management, which is a large interest of high school students, actually probably any age of students. So just a variety of opportunities that takes place within those classes. And then the human services, culinary, within those we really focus on culinary, education, and then design, interior, and fashion. Fashion will be the new one for next year. I'm really excited about what that's going to look like. The culinary program, we have mentors that come in, so industry that comes in and works with the students, but then our students also go, and you've probably received the invitations. They were just last week at Iowa City's pop-up culinary event. So they work with local chefs and help prepare, and then sometimes it's a fundraising event, and then those funds would go back to the ProStart program or culinary programs because consumables are food, and food gets expensive as they're purchasing. And so that's one way, you know, to help the program, but then it's giving those students that great experience. The metal can is I say a partnership. It's reusing the large cans from the food and nutrition that would have whatever they may have in there, but they've made silo houses. And so they've opened it up, and then they've designed what the elevation would look like and designed what that silo home would look like. Within education, we have an early childhood program and then a school-age child. And those, during that time, the students learn about those lifespans, but we're talking, as we're hearing about the great results with Propel, the coaching with reading that's happening with our elementary, and learning from the family consumer science teachers that they talk to students about what books, why books are appropriate, that we're going to then have some lessons where some of the Propel coaches come in and talk with the students about, as they're going into the buildings and doing the elementary tutoring, like what are they looking for? How can they help the students read? So I had an opportunity this semester to teach the elementary tutors class at Jefferson, and so they spent 4 days out of the week in an elementary building, and a lot of it was listening to the students read. And so how wonderful will it be to partner the Propel coaches so they're helping the students understand what they're looking for and how to guide. And work-based learning. Career Tech Ed was the original project-based, problem-based learning, but the work-based learning on the consent agenda was the MOU for Workplace Learning Connection. And so we partner with Workplace Learning Connection for job shadows, internships, and then a variety of other things such as mock interviews, but they work with building level teams to decide what that building sees as a need. So currently this summer, we have 34 students placed in internships across the region. Anything, and I brought my little list because I do support the students in their internship program so they can receive elective credit. But Unity Point Health, Collins Aerospace, PNN Flight Charter, and so students go through an interview process for the internship and would complete 45 to 90 hours during the summer, and those are offered throughout the year also. And then I had already touched upon the school-age child development internships. And then new for 2019-2020 is a real estate marketing class that we'll be piloting at Kennedy second semester to help work with our realtors on selling next year's home. And then the design, some schools had not offered interior design, so we're offering at all the schools interior and fashion design. And then expanding advanced manufacturing, and so offering more of those classes and working with industry to ensure that what students are learning, that it's comparable. And then as we look at what equipment we're going to buy, does that equipment give them what they will need to be able to maybe do a little bit more training and then walk into a career? This is why, not just Career Tech Ed, but why Cedar Rapids Community Schools is here. So this is students future ready. This was our first signing day, and so it was the students with the senior students in the student-built house. And so they were committed to careers. One was interested in law enforcement and all the others in a skilled trade of some kind. And that's not the end-all goal of the student-built house, because you don't have to work in construction or a skilled trade to appreciate knowing what goes into a home. But just the commitment and recognizing, as we've talked, the multiple pathways for success. And so I know part of it is like, how can the board help support what you do already? If something comes across your email, you forward it on to me, or you forward it on to Dr. Buck, and they're like, hey, Tara, have you seen this? That's what I need. Showing up at some of the signing days or checking out the student-built house. If you haven't been in one of the classrooms, great time to come and visit them. That's it, but that's, why we're here. And the last one, of course, questions.
First of all, thank you. It sounds really exciting about what our students are doing in the classrooms, and your energy, your high energy.
Sorry, I talk fast and get loud.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. So for students to participate, are they invited to participate in the career, or?
It's one of their electives.
It's an elective,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And so we do some marketing. We've improved our marketing. Every building at the high school has done that in a different way. A few years ago, we worked with National Alliance for Partnerships and Equity, and so we examined our enrollment data, and then at the building level, and then took that for each building to identify how they wanted to reach out to more students. And so at Kennedy, they started their career cruise, and it's where students have a chance to go around to all of the elective classes. I know the first year they did that, and Kennedy will be the first one to say, like, we have so many students wanting to get into these classes. And so really what we've identified is awareness of it, and then understanding, what it does look like. And if maybe the culinary isn't a fit, maybe there's something else that is, and that if you take that class, it's just to help you. Some people, culinary is great for everyone, or welding. Or I know when I go to the student-built house, I'm like, oh, I need to just spend a week here. I would be that much more better at home. So awareness, but everyone is welcome.
Oh, thank you.
I absolutely love that in the mission statement, it actually clearly says that this is helping develop skills in communication, critical thinking, leadership, and citizenship. And as you talked about all of the examples, whether or not these students are doing labor or technical types of positions, or going on to four-year colleges and doing PhD work and research, all of these skills can apply to whatever they're going into. So this is just terrific, and thank you for all of your work and being such a great ambassador for the school district out there.
Yes. I love what I do.
So sorry. So sorry,
Yes.
John.
Yeah, sorry, John.
I have a question. I think electric car is only at Kennedy, and the real estate will begin next year at Kennedy. How many of the schools carry an option for kind of all of the programming, or are we developing it in one school and then if growing it into another area?
So both. When I started in my role 5 years ago, Jefferson really offered the full range of all of the Project Lead the Way engineering classes, and the others had just the first two. And so now, since that time, we've been adding course by course at the others. The other thing, so the student-built house, students from all the schools can go. And the same does apply for all of those classes. So the Washington High School has the Pro Start program. And so she has had students from Kennedy, Jefferson, and Metro attend there too. And so that's the conversation with students as they're looking at something. If they know just from hearing what's happening within the classes that, you know what, my passion's really going to be culinary and I want to do the Pro Start class. You can still take the culinary classes in your building, but then there's that extra, or the same with the electric car or the real estate marketing. Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to follow up on that, then, do they have to find their own transportation then within?
Noreen will laugh at me because everybody knows that's the hill that I stand firm on. No, they do not. Transportation will not be a barrier.
Thank you. As I listen to this, I just can't figure out how we're working to our mission, every learner future ready. Great, facetious, great work. When you were talking about the mentoring of the high school at doing the reading with is there any thought of creating a future teacher program?
Where is Linda so we can make eye contact and say, yes, yes, we are.
We're working on that. Yep.
Yes. We have some big plans that we'll be rolling out and planning for next fall and throughout the year. Yes.
Great work.
Yes,
Thank
best
you.
way
So glad
to
that you're here.
push to get new teachers is to have them experience it now.
So the thing I was going
Yeah.
to add, so I like seeing the new things and the new offerings that are going to be available, and just knowing that there's that evolution in, what job opportunities or what experiences kids are going to need to eventually lead to those job opportunities, right? My question is more about the makeup and specifically with the students that participate in these programs, because it wasn't that long ago we had a board meeting where we had an ELL update. So with some of those kids within ELL, I think these are great opportunities where, to do construction, you might not necessarily have to speak the language to know how to do the work, right? So what are we doing, or is there anything that can be done as we look to the future maybe and see our elementary schools having more and more diversity, more ELL students, to have some of these programs ready, where maybe our future state would be to have an in-language teacher, right, to be able to do some of these things?
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
So we currently, it's a great fit for our ELL students because language does not have to be a barrier. Measuring is measuring is measuring. And so that kind of thing. And then what some of our teachers have done, one of them has requested and has a GoPro camera and then videotaped the lessons and then has worked on getting that translated because there's safety concerns. And so once they pass the safety test and then being able, but then really as I emphasize, and I work with Emily Gatto with the ELL program, but then talking about how that, being multilingual is really an asset. And so when we have our students that do have that already, how are we helping them identify careers that are careers? And what do we have that offers that? So we are already in those plans and working with that.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
I just had one comment before we close the meeting, so whenever you get ready to do that.
I'm not going to close it. But before we close the meeting, Dr. Buck did mention this was his last meeting with us, and I would like to thank you for all your hard work. You moved us forward, and I wish you well in your new position, and
thank
you will be missed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And just as a follow-up, I believe on Wednesday, there's a public farewell that starts at 3:30 here at ELSC. Yes, I'm not baking the cookies, which is a good thing. But I think a lot of us will have more formal comments at that time, so we'll look forward to that.
Thank you.
Okay, the only thing left is for you guys to get your school calendars and any notes that you have. And our meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Nancy told suggested I roll out of my chair and Army